Just set.
Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the Prism for School of Small Business. I am Salome Chung. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're returning, thank you so much for your support. As you know, we on this channel, our purpose and goal is to empower business owners, entrepreneurs, prospective business owners who are seeking out of the box solutions to business issues, and we're here to provide that. Today, I want to delve into the topic of women's empowerment, not women's empowerment from the traditional sense. Typically, when we think of women's empowerment, we're seeking support from external sources. Accepting women's viewpoints, making an effort to seek them out, and raising women's status through education, awareness, etc. Today, I want to approach it from a different perspective. I want to approach it from the perspective of what internal rather than the external, i.e., for women to lean into the power of their feminine attributes. Often femininity is viewed as weakness. And my guest today, Susan Goodrich, dubbed the Good Witch, is here to explore with me the value and the power of women leaning into their feminine side. Susan is a transformational life coach, and she's here to help you dust off your dreams and bust through your beliefs to start living a life of abundance. Susan, welcome and thank you for being here. I want to first ask you to give me your perspective on what I just kind of introduced in terms of women's empowerment. What is your perspective on the idea that women bring a lot of value, power, not just to the corporate world, but also to the business world, and that they themselves have so much to offer and can offer more if they are willing to get rid of the myth that they have to be just like men and in order to get to where they need to be.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Salome, for having me as a guest. I feel very honored to be here, and I love this topic. Having been an entrepreneur myself for over 2.5 decades, in my own small business, as a software trainer in the engineering world, I know what it's like to be in the masculine world and trying to be the fit in. And like we discussed earlier, was like we think that we need to be better than them in order to maintain those positions. But what I've learned through this feminine power transformational coaching work that I've studied and I'm working with now is that the feminine actually is not weak. It's even though the dictionary says that's what femininity stands for, is we have powers that are here ready to transform the world. And we need to bring those to the forefront. And those things are like compassion, right? Compassion is what's going to heal, because to me, passion is love. And it's really, it's an energy of understanding and reflecting. So it empowers one when we can reflect and hold the space for another. I also believe curiosity, which is, I want to say it's a way to connect with the divine, but it's also how we get into a state of wonder, and it brings on our most brilliant parts of ourself. Because when we can't tap into that part of ourselves, we're working with just the logic, just a small portion of our intelligence,
Mhm.
right? And so in order to really access all of our wisdom, and women have such powerful, wise bodies that when we learn to tap into our bodies, then we can tap into that wisdom, and then we have access to infinite intelligence, really, which we can bring into our work, into business, whether it's, working for someone else or working for yourself. Basically, we're working for our clients, so we want to be able to bring on everything that we can and have compassion for our clients.
Mhm.
But the other beautiful thing is it also helps us to tap into our creativity. And that's where we really blossom. I mean, women are creators, right? Like our womb space is designed to create life, but we are even more creative, that we can learn to channel that energy. And for me, it's like we learn to channel it in a way that we work from the inside out. We need the feminine in order, as women, we need to tap into that to know what our next right steps are. Then we need the masculine structures to be able to bring it up and out to the world. So that's kind of how I see what we just discussed.
That's awesome. As a big believer in intuition myself, which I believe is going to be the driver for successful legacy businesses, it is that one thing that's going to separate um, the leaders from the rest. Because as you said, there is the masculine that deals with all the analytics and the data and all of that. But if you're able to tap into your intuition and harness that power, then that sets you apart from everyone else. And so you have that X factor where you're able to see clearer in terms of what's coming, um, in opposition to other people. So you stand over here and you can see more clearly. And I think that's what you're saying, that women have more of than their male counterparts, and they need to lean into that to get that competitive edge.
Yeah. Whether women actually have more or not, usually it's a little more developed.
Okay.
But I also know that when we work in a very masculine world and we come from that, and that's where we've learned, is that we may be shut down from that deep intuitive knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I have a little story to tell about that particular instance. So I used to work inside an engineering company doing software training. And one of the things that happened was I had this really deep intuition about about building a course for people who were doing like the upgrade training from one version of the software to the next. No one had ever done it. No one had ever done it. Now it's done everywhere, but no one had ever done it. I was like, no, I need to do this because I know that I needed this. And I just knew deep in my gut, and I have a very strong intuitive knowing that we needed to do that. And they were like, well, shouldn't we do some research? Shouldn't we do that? And you know what? When we start doing that as women, if we've already got a deep intuitive knowing, that's going to derail us. And
How,
so I just said, I need to go for this.
how do you think we got here, Susan, where women feel like they need to bury that part of themselves in order to be viewed as powerful, as having something to offer, as being as good as or better than the male? I know it's the narrative that we've been hearing, that in order to be as good as men, you have to be like men. But what that does is make you
A
um
man.
exactly, it makes you you go into your male side, but it also makes you um I want to say, it doesn't make you different. You become as men. You've lost the feminine side. So what you would bring with the feminine, you've lost it and you've become just as men. So what makes you different? You know what I mean? Why do we
Mm.
feel as if we need to do this to be as good? And I know it's a narrative we hear, you've got to walk in and be in the power suit and, act like a guy and, but I do believe, and I agree with you that bringing that feminine side makes you different. As you say, you're bringing the compassion, the creativity, and all those other things that men by nature in general don't bring to the table.
Right. Well, I think, first of all, we didn't have women models, right? We didn't have role models to show us how to use those feminine powers in the corporate world or in business. I kind of feel like I'm, one of the, I used to be called the first of the new people. Like I feel like I've always been a pioneer. And even at the age of 21, I remember graduating from college in architectural drafting, and I was one of the first women ever in their program. And so they would have me speak to, the college professors on my experience as a woman in this particular environment. I think a big piece that has held us back is that one, we didn't have role models, but I've seen a lot of this where, we come into this place of invisibility where we step into like the boardroom or having a sales conversation or where there are men around and we suddenly, our power just gets diminished instead of claiming and knowing. So we need to fully know who we are and what our gifts are. And I think that's one of the things that we don't do. Like we're kind of guided and we're learning to conform. And when you conform, you're not going to make a difference in the world. You can't be a leader and make an impact if you're conforming, right? You need to know who you are, what you're bringing, and where you need to be in order to bring those out to the world. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that I see that. Yeah.
I like that word conform. We do conform. Like you said, we get into the boardroom, feel overwhelmed, and feel as if we need to be part of the crowd instead of instead of standing in your power and
Mhm.
being exceptional, being the one. If you're the one, you're the one. Own it, step into it, and make it something that is um, not acceptable, but make it something that is needed.
Yeah,
Is
well,
it,
know that you're bringing value to the table, right?
exactly.
Like,
It's
you need to
something
know
that
who you, yeah, you
it's
need to kind
something
of know
that
who.
yeah, it's something that is needed in that environment. So everybody else is approaching it from that male perspective. If you can bring another perspective, i.e., leaning into your feminine side and showing the value of leaning into that feminine side, the value and the power, because believe it or not, if the powers that be sees that this brings value, eventually they're going to get on board.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
um, how I want to ask you, Susan, what are three things, and I might be putting you on the spot here. What are three things you think women need to do? Or what would you, if you were meeting a client who says, Susan, um, I feel as if I'm not elevating. I'm not keeping up with the competition. Everyone's singing the same song. What can I do to stand out? And this is a woman in her whatever her business niche or space or realm is. What are three things you would recommend to such a person to say um, in terms of leaning into their feminine? What are three strategies they could use to really push through the veil of the masculine power power structure.
Yeah, we call that the inner glass ceiling. Yeah.
Exactly. What are some strategies and techniques women can use?
Well, I mean, I can think of two that completely come to mind.
Okay.
Um, one for sure is knowing how to tap in to your emotions, like know how to tap into your feelings, learning how to have self-compassion. And it's very much about self-love and self-care. I mean, self-love is self-care really is what self-love is, but self-care, so that we can always be in a creative space where we're looking after ourselves so that we know how to create safety for ourselves. So being really present is also one of those really powerful things, because when we can be really present in our bodies, then we can start to feel really safe. Plus, we're going to be able to be heard. Another thing I think that is really also really important is really getting to know who you are, like, and in learning to embrace all of who you are so that you're not going to show up with like, oh, I forgot that, now I'm, buried myself in shame because I don't like that part of myself. But learning to know all of who you are, know your strengths and your weaknesses, know what you stand for, like your values, because when you know what those are, right? And when you can start to shift them. So when you start to know which ones are not really working for you, and that's like I work with a matrix that has, certainly in the leadership and impact area, I have what, 5 different identities that women would typically identify. One of them, it would be their, the key one we would focus on. And what it does is it helps us understand how the skill sets that they need to step into. Like I said, feelings and needs, that's a really powerful one. Getting to know yourself, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, your values, what you stand for, those are really important. And then to know how to navigate relationships, like how to be in connection with another, right? Those are really powerful pieces.
Yeah. Thank you. What I'm hearing you say um, is being confident, another C word, in what you know you can do, because sometimes as a woman, when you step into a space that's male dominated, you know what you bring, but as you say, they feel, not that they feel less than, but they're not wearing the cloak of, I know what I'm talking about. So it's in here, but it's not here. And
It's
so
in
they can't project what they're about successfully, such that they get the attention of the room that they're in. So it's like not the physical power suit, but the mental power suit. So when you go in, you know that, I am confident in who I am. I'm not, one, I'm confident in it. Two, I believe in it. And three, I believe that it has value. So when you know these things, it's amazing how when you know, accept, and are confident in something, that emanates from you. It comes from you, so that you can get more people on board and they start to believe what you're selling.
Right. So that I think what I hear really when you're talking about that, I think and it's not from a place of ego, it's a place from true authenticity, from
Exactly.
really knowing oneself. And when you are really authentic, you feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to share what it is that you know and you understand, and the place that you're able to communicate it from a place that uh, that people can understand, like they can be fairly succinct in explaining what you're projecting or what you're trying to bring to the table,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And
That
yeah, that whole piece of confidence, like because there's 8 areas that I, as a life coach, there are 8 areas that we try to bring into balance. And one of those, of course, is confidence. So, and calling, like our calling is also another one that's really important. Like, what are we really doing the work that we're supposed to be doing in this world? Like, because each of us are unique. We each bring our own unique gifts, and it's learning to embrace those and present them, right?
That is very true. Um, it's speaking of the difference um, that you're saying about the uniqueness. Each of us bring a different thing. So, what value do you think um, women as a group, or not value, what can women as a group do um, to support each other in terms of in terms of leaning into their femininity and unlearn the script of I have to be just like a man to be as successful as a man.
Mm. Well, I think really championing each other, right? So there in kind of the coaching and the learn, not just the coaching as in SMART goals, but as in, transformational work, really sponsoring and like cheering on each other,
Mhm.
right? And helping and mentoring each other. Those are the skills. And it's interesting because our conditioning is such that we were meant to divide because I did some women's studies, and in the women's studies we go back hundreds of years, and when women didn't work and they weren't even allowed to work, they weren't given education, and so they would have to compete to be a wife, right, to compete for a man. And so that competition still exists a lot in women's circles, especially in business. I've seen it in especially in corporation. I see a lot of that. They're not standing behind each other. And it's when we can start to shift out of that and really start to sponsor each other and cheer each other on, that then we're going to be able to up level and hold women up, right? Because men have this
Mhm.
old boys club, right? They support each
Yeah.
other, right? That's what they do. I mean, they have a healthy competition, but not that so competitive kind of
Mhm.
where I'm better than you and you're better than me, and like that, and doing the comparison, right? That's the another one of the, because some of the work that I've done, I've worked with these archetypes, and the comparison queen, which is one of the archetypes, shows up a lot. It was one that I used to have until I started doing this feminine power coaching work, and I had to learn how to be in sisterhood. Right? I had to learn how to be in it, how to be okay with it, and then learn to actually be a champion myself, like to champion others, right? To be a cheerleader and cheer them on and support them, because that's what's going to raise us up.
It's amazing. We're deep into the conversation, and I think this is what you just spoke about is the nail on the head. It's the elephant in the room, and I hear a lot in talk and narrative about women supporting each other and building each other up. There are a lot of different, female dominated organizations, groups that champion, quote unquote, um, the success and the elevation of women, not just personally but primarily in business. But what I find when I'm in those forums, the truth, the reality is still the same. I will admit that it is changing somewhat, but in general, you are correct. It still remains the same, where we're not as supportive of each other as we could be, and I think that's where we start. Um, because if you, as you say, men champion each other, regardless of whether they're in competition with each other, they have a respect for each other in business. And I think that's what we as women lack. And if we can support women as they lean into that feminine side and recognize that we bring more to the table because we have the masculine side already. We know it all. We have the data. So imagine we've got the data and the analytics and the facts and the figures and everything down pat. But we also have something else. And if we can add value to that, then we're light years ahead of the male dominated spaces. And I think if we can start by supporting each other and making more of what we do as women, because we're women, that side of us is not going away. So if we can give it credence and allow it to live and breathe, then it becomes more of a reality in the business space. And if we as women can really support each other in that way, then I think that's where we start in getting women to be more confident and own that part of ourselves that really is it really is our power. I think it is that thing that is our power that separates us from the male dominated business side.
Yeah, they mean, well, that, I mean, there's the male dominated, and then we could get into a whole other conversation about
I know.
the distorted patriarchy rather than the divine, right? The one that's, unwounded, right? And it's not that men don't have the ability to have compassion and curiosity and creativity,
Creativity, yeah.
right? When they're able to tap into that, I mean, if you're a man and are willing to tap into those and embrace all of those, you'll get to be, up at the, in the leadership area. Another thing that kind of came to mind when you were talking about this whole piece about, being in community and championing other women, is I think it's from my review of these leadership and impact identities that kind of that are distorted, right? These are I am statements about that don't really work for us. What I realized is that we also need to make sure that because we have these special gifts, but these special gifts may not necessarily fit with every community. And so it's finding and learning to recognize, am I with my people?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's another piece.
That's a very important piece. So, Susan, where can the people watching find you? Thank you so much for being here. It's really been enlightening. And as you say, we probably should have a part 2 where we break down the different archetypes. So where can the audience reach you if you have something to offer or want to speak to? This is your opportunity to let the people know where they can find you.
Okay, well, you can reach me at transformwithsue.com. That's my website. You can go there. There are some resources there that you can download. There's something called Emotional Alchemy. You can download that one. And as well as book a call with me, because if you're curious about what any of these archetypes or identities are that you might be, wondering if they're getting in the way of your next step in leadership or in your business, I'd be, more than happy to have a call. It's called Dare to Dream Big Discovery Call. I have a Dare to Dream Big coaching program that it's one-on-one, and it helps. We work through all these feminine powers. It's based on the feminine power transformational work.
Awesome. And I will put all that information in the description of the video. So thank you, Susan, for being here. And thank you all for watching, for tuning in. If you like this content, I've learned a lot. I'm sure you have. Please give a like to the video and subscribe to the channel and come back again to learn more out of the box, transformative, new approaches to business solutions and how these solutions can help elevate, transform, and get your business to thrive for years to come. So, Susan, it was such a pleasure. And stay tuned, everyone, for part 2 of, of Susan Goodrich, dubbed the Good Witch, on the Prism for School of Small Business. So until I see you on the next, be well.